and just from chatting with people at BCI, I feel like everyone's got a rattlesnake story. Why are there so many rattlesnakes? Like, Sarah, do you have a rattlesnake story?
I have several rattlesnake stories, but I'll just save one for for you guys. And I also have rattlesnake stories from other people that I really like at the end. So I don't want to tell them because they're not really my story. But if we have time at the end, we've got a good barrel of rattlesnakes story. Um, so well, a lot of my job involves going into caves. We go into caves 4 times a year. People always ask if you're afraid of, like people claustrophobic, they're afraid of being underground, they're afraid of the dark or things like tight spaces. And that doesn't really bother me. But the thing that I'm always nervous about is like what you're going to run into when you go in these caves. And as you can see from this picture, one of the things we run into is rattlesnakes. So there's a time we do a lot of surveys in North Texas. And one of our caves is really difficult to, or it's not really difficult. It's the most difficult to access. It's a longer hike. It requires climbing like an 8-foot fence. And then once you get to the entrance of the cave, it's about an hour crawl to get to the end. And most of that's hands and knees or sometimes stomach, army crawling. So it's not an easy cave. But this cave does have a skylight, which is basically just kind of an opening in the surface that goes directly down into the cave. And it has collapsed. So you can actually climb down the breakdown pile and get into the cave an easier way. So there's a time I was there with Fran Hutchins, who's the director of Bracken Cave, and Christy Miner, who's the volunteer coordinator at Bracken. So we're going to go into this cave and collect some bats. And we're like, let's, instead of doing all this crazy stuff, climbing the fence, doing this long crawl, like we're just going to go in this skylight. So Fran sends Christy and I in there, and he says, when you go down the breakdown pile, you get to the wall, turn right, and you'll get to the room where the bats are. So Christy and I go down to this, we hit the wall. Christy turns one way and I turn the other way. And we kind of look at each other and we're like, well, this way is right. And she's like, no, this way is right. And so we're in the cave, like having an argument about which direction is right. And Christy and I are really good friends. We never fight. This is probably the closest we've ever come to actually having an argument. So we climb back out of the cave. We drag Fran down in there with us because we're like, Fran, we can't decide which way we're supposed to go. So this room that we're going into is called the pancake room because you have to really flatten yourself out, like stomach, turn your head to kind of crawl under this rock to get into where the bats are. So we're pancaking ourselves, Fran's first, then me, and then Christy. And all of a sudden we just hear Fran yell, stop, snake. And we stop and you hear this rattlesnake. So we're in this really tight, it's not completely a tight tube, but, we're all flat on our stomachs. We have a snake stick, luckily, but Christy has it. So Christy's in the back, and so she's trying to wedge this like snake stick up to me, and then I have to get it up to Fran. And the snake is right in the entrance. So where the pathway opens up into the big room where we're trying to get is this little, not the snake in this picture, this one's much bigger, but the one we had was a little like baby. And the little ones are actually more dangerous because they're a little bit more prone to biting, they're a little more nervous, more likely to go after you. So luckily, Fran took the stick, was able to push it off to the side. Christy and I got to crawl past him and go into the room, and he just kind of sat with the snake the whole time while we were doing our thing, surveying the bats, and then we crawled out and left it alone. But yeah, just one of those things that, again, we've seen porcupines, we've seen raccoons, but snakes are definitely, and growing up in Ohio, not something I really ever thought about. So we've encountered many rattlesnakes in numerous caves, but yeah, that's one of the stories that I like the most, just of arguing about which direction to go and then running into a snake at the end of it.
And Fran babysat the rattlesnake.
He did, yes.
Classic Fran. And so like what was so difficult about like left versus right, that like were you turned around in
Yeah. I know that Christy's watching this, so I don't want to say anything that's going to start our argument over. I really think it was the direction that we were thinking when we hit the wall. I was thinking the wall was one thing and she was thinking the other thing. But I also think that maybe Christy and I just have this thing with directions, because we were out at a BCI Christmas party last year and we were at a restaurant, and she had gone to the restroom and she came back and said, where's the restroom? She said, you go to the bar and then you turn left or whatever. And I walk in, I'm like, Christy, the bar's to the right. So we just have this opposite opinion on what direction is right and left. So I think in our minds, we were both right. We were both going the correct way. We were just arguing about which way was actually right or left.
Wow, okay, interesting. And like, so the snake that was like, is it common to find snakes in there? Had it fallen in through the skylight thingy, or like?
Yes, so it's most common to find them right around the entrances or exits of caves. So they're not going to be super deep in there unless there's a skylight like this where it's gonna and it didn't really fall in. There was a pathway that we could walk down. So he probably it probably came down and just crawled through. But yeah, we typically this snake in particular that there's a picture of is one where we have a ladder. We have to put the ladder down in the cave. And so when Christy and another one of the techs got down, they found this rattlesnake at the bottom of their ladder waiting for them. So yeah, we just have to be generally really careful if you're going in a particularly rocky, I mean, most of the caves are rocky, obviously, but if there's a lot of hidey holes, we just have to take our time, be quiet, listen for the rattle, and just always be aware. You know, it's really easy. I think I was gonna say this in another story. It's really easy to get complacent. We go into these caves 4 times a year. So it's kind of routine at this point, but there's always surprises. So you always have to be aware that something like this could be waiting for you.
Interesting.
Yeah, snakes and bats are kind of similar in how they like to use undergrounds, or at least rattlesnakes are. Like they hibernate, rattlesnakes hibernate underground. And I'm not a snake biologist. I've worked with snakes, but they have hibernacula similar to bats where they will all congregate. And there's some in Idaho that I know of that there are like snake use evidence going back 1,000 years. So I can't imagine what that smells like, but there's like dead snakes, there's snake effluents, there's like a cave. It's like the literal chamber of secrets in biology. So yeah.
Okay.
Snakes love cave.
Yeah. And Kathleen, do you have a run-in with a snake story?
Oh man, I feel like anybody working in the West or in snake territory has snake encounters. And I used to work, well, I encounter snakes pretty frequently in mine surveys, with some of you actually too. Other people getting echoing stuff? No, I don't think so, Dave. I was gonna mention you, Dave, but we find in the mine surveys, we find snakes fairly frequently because they enjoy the cool environment. And so it's definitely the entrances and exits, like Sarah was saying, you always have to be aware for the sound. But I worked on a job a couple of years ago where we were pit tagging and radio tracking rattlesnakes to do a long-term study. And so you have to go to where they exit their hibernaculum all this, generally at the same time, and you go and try to catch as many as you can before they disperse across the landscape. And I remember one time going to the snake hole out in the middle of the sink pit, or out in the middle of the salt flat to the sinkhole. And my boss was like grabbing these rattlesnakes left and right, putting them in his bag. And then that's not the snake pit. But then, and I didn't know this about rattlesnakes until I moved out west. But they can climb. They can climb up sagebrushes. They can climb up cave walls. They can climb up rock walls. And it's not like a climb, but they climb. And so my boss is climbing after a rattlesnake. He's climbing up this thing, and he's got these big old boots, and he's like trying to grab the snake with the snake sticks on this cliff. And he had the snake bag also somehow. And the snake bag, it was so windy in the snake bag, which is a long sack on you put the snake with the snake stick into the snake bag. This sounds silly, but you put the snake, and then you have the snake bag, and it's a bag full of snakes. And I was sitting there being like, I don't know how to help, but I'm here to support you. Somehow I'm here. And it was really windy, and a bag of like 4 or 5 rattlesnakes blew off his snake stick because it was super windy. It like hit me in the chest and fell on the ground, and I am clearly still here, so I'm fine, but that's my snake story.
Snakes can also fly, apparently.
Snakes can fly, they can climb. They're very, and also I learned recently, I went to a talk at a university talk with a local snake expert, and she was saying that snakes actually are really, especially rattlesnakes, are quite, they're not as like, they have social bonds they can have social bonds with each other. So they're not this like, just animal going out eating and doing what is rattling at you. They also like form pair bonds and travel together and have friends, and they'll protect each other. And they're very they're also a maligned creature. So classic that we're talking about snakes in a bat chat. This photo, I was gonna segue into that photo of me, but
Go.
take it away. I don't know.
No,
Do bats
so
form
what-
pair bonds? Sorry, there's a question in the chat from Amanda. Do bats form pair bonds? I don't know about like friendship. Maybe somebody who's done more bat work could drop that in the chat of pair bonding. But I know, and maybe Sarah, you've experienced this too. But with the Western bat, the pallid bat, like the classic desert bat, Antrosus pallidus. I hope I said that right. And you will often, especially in this time of year, you will catch them in twos because there'll be a mom and a baby, or like a mom and a juvenile. And somebody, Jessie Bunkley, who's the Western PacWest Bat Hub research coordinator, I'm messing up her title really badly right now. Jessie Bunkley at BCI actually recorded acoustically a pallid bat teaching a novel hunting technique to a younger bat. So they're incredibly social creatures that live decades. So they totally have friends. They like have enemies. They have arcs, I imagine, you know, friends to enemies, enemies to friends. Yeah. Jessie, yes, it was, I bet.
whole soap opera, whole drama, all the tea.
Oh, really? Big brown bats fly. You have to separate the friends. Tony is in with big brown bat story in the chat. Yeah. Sorry.
Interesting. Fascinating. Okay. And so was the bag of snakes getting thrown at you? Is that the closest you've been in contact with a snake, the rattlesnake?
Thrown is not maybe the correct. Thrown implies intent, but it certainly did travel at me. But no, so those snakes that were in the bag, we had to then pit tag, and one of them had a radio transmitter, so we had to perform surgery to remove the radio transmitter because that part of the study was done. And so we put the snake. I was there again, there to support and be present, but much more trained and expert handlers were involved. And so, but I did get to help. The snake in question with the radio transmitter was anesthetized with the same anesthesia that they use for humans. Isoflurane, and we all go to sleep with it. And snakes have a little breathing hole underneath their tongue, and so in order to revive them from surgery, you need to take the snake who's anesthetized, and you have to like put it right here, and then you have your own face right here, and you have like a little breathing tube, and you put it into the snake's mouth, and you like breathe into it to off gas the iso from it. Share blood. They do. Oh, sorry.
But it seems like there's got to be a better way, right?
It's a really great, honestly, really great way. I was like, I really trust, like, I've had surgery before, and I know that I was not present. Like, I was not present for that. So I was like, this snake is not present right now. This snake is like not right. It's beautiful.
Wow.
They're very soft. Rattlesnakes are very soft. I don't think people know that.
Oh, okay. Well,
Our
maybe
best.
I won't pet one anytime soon, but I mean that's certainly a skill to have, to be able to resuscitate. Is that a skill you have, Sarah, resuscitating snakes?
They're good
I have. I could have it. I've never had to use it. It sounds like I'd be able to do it, but I think I'll pass.
Fair. So what are some other skills that you've been able to practice while working at BCI?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I get this question a lot from younger people that are coming up and they're interested in the field, and they want to know what sort of things they need to be a bat biologist. And there's no right answer. I mean, there's so many skills that I've learned in this job that I never knew that I would need to be a bat biologist. And so my favorite one that I've learned since being at BCI is here in these pictures. So I learned how to rappel. So when I was in Ohio, I did a lot of indoor rock climbing, but I never got to rappel. So when it came to BCI, we have, so Kathleen was talking about pit tagging. So pit tagging is basically, it's like kind of like a microchip that you would put in your pets. So we can tag bats with these pit tags, and you put antenna systems around caves or wherever you want to know. And as the bat flies through these antennas, we get reads on the pit tags. So you can follow the movement of bats between caves and time of day and all that stuff. So this cave that I'm at, you can't really see the cave on the right here, but it's a cave in North Texas. You can actually walk down to the entrance of it. It's easy to access. But the problem with this equipment is we have to run it with solar panels. And then we're also testing out a remote system. So normally we have to physically be there, plug in our computer to this equipment, download the data, but they do make cell modems, so we can just pull data from the computer in our office. The problem is we don't have any cell service down at the bottom of this cave. We don't have any light down there to put up the solar panels. So we had to go up this cliff that's like 100 feet above the entrance to the cave, put up all the solar panels, all the equipment, and then somehow get those power cables and that Ethernet cable down to the bottom. And as you can see from this picture, there's a lot of trees and debris and rocks and stuff there. So we couldn't
And
just
snakes.
and snakes, yeah. So we couldn't just throw the cable over. We had to actually rappel it down. So I'd never done this before. So the picture on the left is actually me out at Bracken Cave. So I live pretty close to Bracken. We've got these shipping containers there where we store a lot of our equipment. So we decided we're going to go up and climb on the shipping containers and learn how to rappel off the shipping container to start. And it's really nerve-wracking if you've never rappelled before. It's like you're backing up to the edge of this cliff, and then you just have to kind of trust. I don't want to use the word trust because you should check all your equipment. You should make sure it's going to work. You should know when you're going over that cliff that it's going to work. But there's always that little thing in the back of your head that like, maybe this isn't, I'm just going to fall flat on my back here. So we, had to just kind of go over, we practiced this a bunch of times. Again, this was all my stories also feature Fran and Christy. They were both there as well. We had a lot of fun. We all ended up upside down at one point or another from doing something wrong. So we went and practiced. Yes, Kathleen, you're right. That's a rack that I'm using there. So went and practiced rappelling a couple of times, and then I actually got to do it for the first time at this cave. And there's a video out there of me somewhere where one of the my coworkers was interviewing me before, and she's, "How are you feeling, before this rappel?" And I was like, "Well, I was really confident before we got here, and now that we're here, I'm very nervous." I was like, "There's a lot of trees down here." But it was a really great experience, and this was probably a great site to learn because the first 50 feet there was actually a lot of like kind of some slope. You could rappel maybe 5 feet, and then you'd hit ground again, and you could really take your time getting comfortable with the equipment. And then I got to the point where it was just 50 feet of air below me, and that's a really weird feeling if you've never done it, to just take your feet off of the surface. And just in my brain, as soon as my feet left the wall, I was just going to drop like a rock the last 50 feet. And that's not what happens. So there's also pictures of me kind of, the wall's here, my feet are on it, and then I'm kind of like this, where my feet are up in the air and my back's pointed towards the ground because I just could not get my brain to put my feet off the wall. But then there's a great video somewhere also too of I finally did it, and then I'm coming down. I'm like, this is so easy. Why was I so scared? This is amazing. So yeah, so rappelling, never a skill that I thought. I mean, I guess as a bat biologist, maybe rappelling is a skill you'd think, but some of the other things, I'm currently learning how to back up a trailer, which is, as Kathleen calls it, the trailer rodeo. That's an interesting skill. And then I think the scariest one that I've been dealing with is electrician. So a lot of this equipment, we're wiring solar panels to batteries, to, when I was doing the Fat Bat project, to light bulbs. And that's really scary. I mean, I guess if you do rappelling wrong, you're also going to get hurt. But like electricity for me is a very scary thing. And so I'm probably the most nervous when I'm wiring something. So for people that are interested in this career pathway, there's a lot of transferable skills that you would never think, as a bat biologist, I'm going to need to know how to wire 2 batteries in series and then hook it up to a solar panel. Never would have thought that.
Absolutely. There's a lot of more hands-on skills than one would immediately think for scientists. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, having to relearn what like amps and watts and voltage all mean in relation, and you're like, do I need a fuse in here? Do I need a charge control?
Oh, yeah.
And then you're like a semi electrical engineer, honestly. That's
Yeah.
like,
With the Fat Bat setups, there was a very specific way that I learned how to, and so for people that aren't familiar with Fat Bat, that was a project that we've been working on where we're putting UV lights near hibernacula to see whether or not that can help fatten bats up before they go into hibernation. So we're wiring up these lights, and there's a very specific way that I learned how to do it. And then I came to Texas, and Fran knows a lot more about electricity than I do, and he had wired it in a completely different and better way. But one of the units broke at one point, and I was like, I have no idea how to fix this because it's not the very specific way. There's all these like switches and things in here that I have no idea what they are. And so, yeah, just knowing that there's a zillion ways to do it is kind of intimidating.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot. I feel like everything so far has been intimidating. Like, are there that you guys have spoken of so far? Like,
It's
are there?
well, sorry, yeah, sorry. We were having this conversation before we came on, and Kathleen and I were saying it was kind of hard to think of stories because it is routine for us, and you don't think about how other people view what we do. I mean, like I said, we go in these caves 4 times a year, we do all these crazy things. And for us, it's just normal. And yeah, so it's interesting to see other people's reactions or perspectives of what we're doing, because to us, it's another day at work.
yeah, like a typical day at work is me on my belly swimming through various amounts of fecal matter, looking for specific fecal matter, which I will then put in a tube and then send to the fecal matter specialist lab, species from feces. And that's it. I went to college for this.
Well,
But
sometimes my Excel spreadsheet doesn't work the way I want it to. So
if you need some fecal samples in your like general area, Linda, I got you.
That's a real problem too, though. We do data entry, Excel spreadsheets, Word docs, terrible.
Yeah, no good.
yeah, so are there any other sort of kind of scary experiences or experiences that, like, I don't know, we'd think were scary, but like you just knew to trust your gut?
Well, right now it's monsoon season in the Southwest, and we are having a lot of lightning discussions because unlike a 12-volt battery, unlike a 12-volt battery, lightning is not 12 volts. I don't know how to say these things. But yeah, so the only safe place to be from lightning is inside of a building, and second best is inside of a metal car, not a convertible, not a Jeep with its whatever tops, not safe. So, and if you're in the field and you see lightning, you're like, I'm 3 miles away across like horrible lava, or like, how am I? And you're like, and then you have to make these decisions based on your gut. And as a little human creature, when you're faced with something insurmountable like lightning, it feels really like you can use your brain. You should use your brain, but like you really do have to listen to your gut, and your gut is like, we need to get out of the field now. You probably should beat a hasty retreat, but I've definitely been stuck. We spent a lot of time in these mining, and I'm on the sub-T team, and we spent a lot of time doing abandoned mine surveys, and there are mines happen where there are geologic inconsistencies in these layers, and so they're inherently unstable across the landscape, as opposed to like a giant sandstone cliff, like giant stone. So if you're stuck out in these like clay layers, like in the uranium bearing layers, which we do surveys in, and I've done surveys in for other companies, if you hear lightning, the lightning probably won't get you. It like probably won't. If it does, it's not good. But what will get you is if it's raining and then you try to like drive, and then the road is made of soup. And so then you're kind of like stuck out there. I don't know if you've ever been stuck out, Sarah, and you're like, I literally can't go anywhere. And now I'm going to have to make a raincoat out of a trash bag because I live in the desert and forget that it rains. And now we have to wait until like midnight, maybe 1 a.m. And we're just going to sit here with my coworkers in this UTV having a it's most it's the Morrison and the Chinley layers within the grand staircase of the Colorado Plateau. Those will get you. Yeah, those will get you. So trust your gut, leave the field, don't get stuck out. But then you have a great story and time with your coworkers if you do. So
Yeah, the photo I've put up, I believe is you. Not sure where you are in the world, but one can see that it doesn't look like you're, a short walk away from the nearest Wawa or whatever regional gas station one wants to insert there. So.
Yeah, no, that would that's you. We had a storm roll in the day before that. I'm in central Arizona, just a little north of Phoenix there. And yeah, and also in the entrances of caves is the most dangerous place, one of the most dangerous places to be in the event of a storm, because somehow it like attracts, and then you have all these like weird little interactions with water. And so if you're in a standing pile of water, a pile of water underground, then you could potentially have electricity be conducted through, if it struck the surface, be conducted through groundwater and other hydrological entities, and you would be struck under. Electricity is crazy. So
okay, well, that just unlocked a new fear because I didn't know that. Thank you.
Snakes, lightning, whatever. Wait,
Yeah.
Sarah, I thought you had a good story of trusting your gut in also a scary situation of like potentially being lost underground.
Yes, yeah, that makes it sound, I guess, way worse. But
But that's what it is.
Right, yeah. So Linda had, given us some think about some stories, and I was thinking about scary things. And I think fortunately for me, I don't have a lot of scary stories because we are pretty safety conscious. You have to be when you're doing this kind of thing. But we do always tell people when we bring them out, whether they've been in caves, mines before, it's their first time. It's like Linda said, trust your gut. So this is another story that features Christy again. So Christy and I were at this cave in North Texas, and so I just I've been working with BCI for 3 years, but I just got to Texas about a year ago. So I'm still learning the caves here. So I've been in them with other people a few times. And when this story took place, it was sort of our first test of, can you lead the cave survey without somebody else, leading it for you. So Christy and I went in together. There's this cave, and you would walk up. It's this big, beautiful entrance, and it's so inviting, and you walk right into it. And that's the wrong entrance. So there's a little hole in the ground to the right of it. That's like a 5-foot drop sort of. And so that's where we were supposed to go. And so we just walked straight into this beautiful entrance, and then it very, very quickly narrows down into basically just a tunnel. So we're on like hands and knees crawling through this tunnel. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this doesn't feel right. I've been in this cave before. I don't remember this long crawl. And what we do when we go in the caves is we have these stations that were marked with silver tags, and we swab them to look for the fungus that causes white nose syndrome. And normally we hit them pretty quickly when you go into a cave. So you're like going the right way when you start running into the stations. So we're crawling for quite a while, and I'm starting to get really nervous, kind of shaky, like, edge of a panic attack. And we reached a spot where you can actually sit up. It's tall enough to sit up. And I'm looking at Christy, I'm like, this is not right. You turn around, we crawl back out, and Fran's up at the top of the hill. And we're yelling to him, like, are we going the right way? Should we be crawling? And he's like, yeah, sounds like you're on the right track. So we look at each other, we go, okay, I guess we just have to go further. So we go back in, we crawl through the cave, we get to that same spot, and I'm sitting and I'm like, Christy, I don't want to go any further. Like, I'm really not feeling good about this. And she, very sweetly was like, okay, I'm gonna go a little bit further. There's a bend up in the tunnel ahead. And so she crawls, and it's the point now she's army crawling. She's on her stomach, crawling like this. And I'm like, that's not right. So finally she turns around, she comes back, and we go out again. And it's this point where we've been like an hour in the wrong spot. And then finally we're just looking all over and found the little tiny hole. And I was like, I think this is where we're supposed to go. So we dropped down in. Immediately I was like, this is familiar. Like, this is where we're supposed to be. So it's one of those things where again, I've been in that cave, well, not that specific cave. We found out later if we would have kept going, it would have been about a 45-minute crawl, and we would have connected to one of our other caves. So we wouldn't have been totally, totally lost. We would have been very confused, and I would have not had a good time. But you know, we just tell everyone the data is not worth putting yourself at risk. You know, we love the bats. We want to collect all the data that we can to help them, but we have to think about ourselves first. If you get in the cave, you're not feeling it that day, even if it's one you've been in 1,000 times, everybody's free to turn around and go out. If you don't know where the heck you're going, and yeah, definitely turn around and leave. So luckily that's the only time it's happened.
And I think this is a picture of Kathleen, but like I feel it is a really good example of like the teeny tiny little like just like indents that are supposedly caves that you guys just like dive into. That like things that I wouldn't even look twice at.
Yeah, I would I'm not too nervous. Like when I go underground, I don't really, I guess some of the other trust your gut or things. I don't really think twice about it until you're in this cave that you've been in a zillion times, and then there's a new rock. And you're like, oh, that rock has not been there before. It obviously fell off the ceiling at some point in the last 3 months since I've been here. And then you're reminded that like things are happening, you know, these caves are still active. And so yeah, I'm not too into squeezing myself through the tiny spaces, but if it's a place that I've been in, again, we do the same caves. We've got 16 caves that we survey like 4 times a year. So I'm really comfortable in those caves. But if you were to send me into a brand new one or to tell me to go into a hole like that, I would tell you, no, thank you. I'm not doing that.
Amanda asked how you get, yeah, how did I fit? Yeah. You guys, I don't know. Does anybody else like weighted blankets or like a big hug? Or I grew up caving and doing squeeze box in National Speleological Society meetings that I've been to as a kid. They had a squeeze box challenge, and it's these two plates that they crank closer and closer together, and they see who can fit through the smallest squeeze. And when I was 12, I went to my first NSS meeting in Kentucky, and I almost won the squeeze box challenge because I was 12. But I got beat by a 9-year-old, and I'm still bitter about it. But they fit through the squeeze box. It was $1, the length of $1 bill.
Oh my gosh.
Which is 6 inches.
Just seems crazy.
Yeah. Well, 9, if you're 9, but
yeah.
And this
somebody.
Stuff, oh yeah.
Sorry, it was somebody said in the chat, if your head fits, the rest of you will. I've heard that too. It makes me really nervous because I've also heard stories of, if you have to go out the same way that you came in, sometimes, if the rocks are maybe they're all pointed in a direction that is helping you get this way, when you turn around to come this way, those rocks are now snagging you and catching you. And so I think that's what makes me nervous, is that maybe I can get in there, but I don't know if I can get back out. So that's a big fear of mine. So for me, it's like as long as I'm not being touched on all sides, I'm okay with like an army crawl as long as my sides are open, or like I can squeeze if, like this, if my head's open. It's just, I just can't do that, like constricting on like a tube.
And that's if there's no water involved too. Like, I don't know if you've ever an ear dipper, and you gotta like turn your head. So you're like, that's too deep for me. That's deep enough. Yeah. That's a mining term I know from some realms. Deep enough. That's deep enough for me. And then you go back up. Yeah. I don't really get anxiety. The thing I've known about, like, you just gotta be aware of what you're able to do, and not do things because of weird pressures or ideas about like, oh, I gotta like show off to my boss. I gotta show him I'm tough. Which, I mean, I've totally been that person. But now that I'm older and wiser, how the violator shaft? How do bats get into these crazy cave entrances? Well, bats are really crazy. They're incredibly agile navigators. And like some of them are built like little helicopters, like Corinnarinus tansendii. The Bracken cave bats are built like fighter jets. So that's why you need a big opening like Bracken cave for them. You need a big space for them to take off. But if you're a little Townsend speared bat, you don't need, you can just like, they can fit into the craziest thing. You'll go into a little mine that's like almost totally constricted, or a cave with a tiny opening, and you'll be like, there's never gonna be any bat. I'm not gonna find any bats. And then you're like, there's a bat right there. Like, anyway, who's this bat? Is that for you, Sarah? Is that yours?
It is, yeah. I did not take this photo, but I recently had the opportunity to do some work with well, not really some work. I went on another, I tagged along with some people who were doing work on the Mexican longnose bat. And so that's an endangered species. So a nectar feeding bat, feeds on agave, and super, super cute. So I had to share that photo.
That's Kira Nectaris.
Leptonictus nivalis is that.
Leptonavalis. Okay. Yeah, they're strong. Those bats have gone to the gym. They are like really ripped.
I was very surprised. So as part of this project, they were putting GPS trackers on the bats to try to figure out where they were foraging and just spending other time. And so I was part of the thing that I was doing was helping the graduate student hold the bat while she put the tag. And I'm used to these tiny, we've been tagging Indiana bats, tricolor bats, like small things. And I had to use, both my hands to hold this bat down while it's like, very angrily trying to get away. And they were strong. They're
really strong. They fight. I was taking a tissue sample from one this summer, and I love bats that don't go quietly. They're like, I'm fighting this till the
rage.
Yeah, and I had a Nivalis bite me through its own wing. It was like so like it got me pretty good. It was not a one-hand bat for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, good for them.
That's wild. One quick question about this photo. Like, is that its lip or is its tongue sticking out?
That's its tongue.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, very cute.
That's so cute. I saw someone had commented earlier back when we were talking about rattlesnakes. Someone had commented that they'd been to Bracken before and seen streams of Coachwhip snakes heading for the cave. And yikes.
Coachwhips won't bite you. They're not venomous at all. They're very friendly.
Yeah, sometimes a little bit of nightmare fuel if you're not used to that.
True. Those are not mutually exclusive facts. Those are not mutually just Coachwhips are really cute though.
I would argue that rattlesnakes are also cute.
I think they're really cute, and they have some of them have like really crazy eyebrows going on, like really really dramatic eyebrows. And they've just been persisting. Like the Great Basin rattlesnake will curl up and gather water that from the rain if it rains, and it'll curl up and then lick the water off itself because it sure needs the moisture. It's like real dry out here,
Yeah.
Snag bats out there. Yeah, they do snag the bats, which is also like, it's cool though, but it's sad, but it's cool. It's really impressive. I don't think I've ever seen a snake eating a bat.
I have.
You
Not
have?
here. So when I lived in Puerto Rico, there was this graduate student that would come out and study bats, and she would go to the Cueva de los Culebrones in Manatí, Puerto Rico, and obviously it's like snake cave. So they had the Puerto Rican boas would hang down from the entrance and just again snag the bats out of the air. And then it's one of those things where it's like, it's cool. I love snakes and I love bats, so you're conflicted because you want to save them. But snakes so, but yeah, it was really, really interesting to watch that. And I've seen it at Bracken as well.
Wow. Yeah. I want to go to the UK.
Kathleen, somebody asked if this photo is Bracken. I know that that's not Bracken, having been in Bracken, but I don't know where that is.
That is, I think Rachel took that picture. That's a mine. That's a tungsten mine in north of Bishop, California, that we were doing a LiDAR survey on. The local land managers had closed it with gates 20 years previously or so with some, you know, fellow mine, on the behest of some fellow regional mine and bat experts. Not BCI, but collaborators and longtime people that we've done. I think it was Pat Brown, like, who's been a bats and mine person since this, I want to say the 60s. So she knows bats and mines. But yeah, we were doing a LiDAR, which renders a 3D image of the mine itself, and I don't know what I'm doing. Looking. I think I was posing, just posing. But those, oh yeah?
I was gonna say, it looks kind of like there's like a lot of like, I don't know, like layers of white stuff. Is that bag guano, or like dust and dirt?
Yes, well, a lot of dust and dirt is guano, you know, just like in general. And underground spaces are very dirty because they don't get a lot of airflow, like unless they get a lot of airflow. You know, they just like, there's suspended particulate crap in all senses of the word. And so that's why in a lot of these you'll see I'm wearing a N95, and we you know, it was already the pandemic came along, and it was like, wow, I feel like everybody got like a big dose of respiratory protection awareness. But we have to use N95s underground, otherwise you'll get the black lung. Yeah, no, that's just dirt and dust from that thing falling apart. It's falling apart. Not really like actively, but we're all falling apart. With respiratory illness. I have never been infected with a respiratory illness. I do know people that have gotten histoplasmosis. I know people that have gotten Hanta as well, and those are no good. And yeah, those are, oh, it was special. Yeah, it's no good. It's not good for you. Histo is a fungus. Like, you don't have fungus in your lungs. Oh. So that's, the respiratory protection is incredibly important. We do uranium mine surveys, so that's important for the dust too. How do you determine when it's safe to go? Your gut feel. Like, no, but a lot of it is your personal decision-making skills. And I don't know how you guys do things there, but you were kind of talking about the same principle, but like, I feel like in general, we have like and I assume on your team as well, we have like this really great rapport where everybody has a lot of trust for you. You have to like trust that a person knows their capabilities and will operate within them, and you have to respect that those capabilities are probably different than yours, and they've been built on experiences that are different than yours, and you give and receive this like same level of trust, and you're also looking out for each other, so you like trust but verify. And then you know, some things look really dangerous. Some things can like look really dangerous, but if you get a different perspective, they aren't. Or if you just like avoid and don't touch, they won't be dangerous. Yeah, it's a really it's a constant conversation. You have to keep having it during the field day. You have to keep, you know, keeping an eye on each other, being like, hey, I haven't seen you drink water all day, or you know, or hey, I'm feeling kind of tired. Can somebody else take this one? So yeah, it's a lot of responsibility, but we all keep an eye out for each other too. So that's
good. Yeah. Well, last question from Tilly here. What is each of your favorite caves or locations that you've gotten to work in?
There you go.
Yeah. Well, there's so I guess there's two reasons to have a favorite, I guess. So there's some really cool caves. I'm in Central Texas. There's some really neat show caves around this area that have all the beautiful formations and things in it. And so there's a couple, I don't want to like shout out any names, but there's some really beautiful
classic Texas caver.
yeah, well, no, I don't want to endorse anybody, but when you go into caves that have bats in them, they really don't, most of them don't have these pretty formations, because there's bats flying around, and so they're like knocking into things. If there's, you know, they're not gonna have these nice delicate soda straws, because the bats are gonna hit them and knock them down. So they're sort of my favorite caves because they have really beautiful formations, and then there's my favorite caves because of the bats. And I mean, obviously I have to go Bracken Cave. It's just amazing. And Linda had a picture, one of these slides is me standing outside of Bracken. So I live really close. I have the opportunity to go fairly often to Bracken. I've been inside of it a couple times, not super interesting on the inside. Really, most of the show's happening on the outside, but you know, it's kind of cliche, but I have to say it's definitely my favorite cave for the bat aspect.
I'm so sad I didn't get to make it out for Eclipse. I will make it. I will make it one day. I have a lot of favorites. I don't know which one is my favorite, but I always really love, my favorite cave. I always really love going to lava beds because that's where I started doing a lot of cave work. I love lava tubes. Any lava tube, anywhere. They're crazy. They're just frozen. They're frozen magma, you know? So anyway, filled with bats.
Well, it definitely sounds wild. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, both of you, for your sharing your amazing experiences with us. You know, some of those I definitely would not have expected to hear. You know, fascinating stuff. But let me just see here. So
Thanks for asking us about it.
Of course, yes. Well, the
That's
people
nice.
need to hear it. So let's see. For the audience, if you want to learn more about BCI's work and Kathleen and Sarah's work, you can visit our website at batcon.org. If you're not already, subscribe to our mailing list and our newsletter. That's where you'll hear about future webinars and the different projects that our staff work on. We'll have this webinar recording uploaded to YouTube shortly. And thank you, Kathleen and Sarah, for sharing your experiences again.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming to listen to us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so that's all for now, folks. Thanks for caring about bats, and we'll see you at the next Bat Chat.
Bye, everybody.
Ah.